It is a good day, beautiful day outside.
If you're waiting for Wilder to get through,
Clerk will call the roll.
Glenn Whitley, County Judge.
Here.
Roy Charles Brooks, Commissioner Precinct 1.
present.
Andy H. Wynn, Commissioner Precinct 2.
Here,
Gary Fickus, Commissioner Precinct 3.
Here.
J.D. Johnson, Commissioner Precinct 4.
Here.
Constitutes a quorum.
Thank you. Our invocation today will be delivered by Senior Pastor Kenneth Jones from the Como First Missionary Baptist Church. Thank you for coming out today, sir. After the invocation, please remain standing for our pledges.
May we bow our heads. O Lord, our Lord, how excellent is thy name in all the earth. It is with awe and honor we bow in your presence to thank you for this day. May your majestic power rule in this county, this city, this state, this nation, that all men and women may know that you are the sovereign judge. And may your peace, power, and protection be meted out this day. We pray your blessings upon our county judge and each commissioner in this court, the governing body of Tarrant. And may every proclamation, resolution, and presentation and all business conducted before this esteemed body today be met with your approval and that your will be done. May there be a spirit of coalition, cooperation, respect, and dignity amongst all who stand before this court and who conduct business this day. In the precious name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. Thank you, Pastor, for coming out today.
May I give my thanks to one of the most distinguished pastors in all of Tarrant County, and he happens to be from Como, Texas.
Como.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Honor. Members of the Court, we have two announcements relating to the agenda this morning. The first item is under purchasing. I'll get to it real quick here. This would be item 8I3. This is RFP 2017-056. We're going to ask the court to reject all proposals on that this morning. However, we are not going to ask you to rebid, authorization to rebid with revised specifications. Also, members of the court, under the Sheriff's Department, item J1, we're going to move that up in the agenda this morning, and we are going to ask that it be considered under item 6, which is proclamations, resolutions, and presentations. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir. Court members, you have before you the minutes of our regular meeting of March the 14th.
move for approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. We have a couple of proclamations. The first one is on Poison Prevention Week, and I would like to move its approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Commissioner Brooks.
I have a proclamation honoring Cesar Chavez Day. It's for ratification only. It will be presented on Saturday. I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Commissioner Johnson.
Yes, I have a resolution of recognition for Mr. John Joyce. If you would please read that into the record.
John Joyce came to work for Joel Glenn at the City Center Security
in 1982, and whereas he made his way through the ranks from security guard to mid-level manager to senior manager in various programs in the downtown area and throughout the Bass organization, and whereas John Joyce became Deputy Director of Security with law enforcement liaison responsibilities and has assisted Joel Glenn and the Bass family in their efforts with the One Safe Place, as well as other key enforcement and crime prevention programs. And whereas he has been a key component in the Bass family efforts to prevent crime in the Fort Worth metropolitan area, now therefore be it resolved that we, the Commissioners Court of Tarrant County, do hereby honor and congratulate John Joyce on the occasion of his retirement and for his years of dedication to law enforcement and to his dedication to eliminating domestic violence, in witness whereof we have hereunto set our hands and caused the seal of Tarrant County to be affixed this 21st day of March 2017.
I move for its approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
And Mr. Joyce, if you would meet me at the podium, please.
I'm thinking there was a little surprise going on here.
Wasn't this what's supposed to happen? Well, good morning. Good morning. Let me present this to you and let's get a picture. All right, and I just want to say thank you for all that you've done for all the people of Tarrant County, and any comments you'd like to make, I would appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Thank you all very much. I stand here very humbly, of course, and very surprised. I was baited into being here this morning, but I love what I do. I love the family that I work for. I feel honored to be able to work for the Bass family. I know you all know who they are and what a great family they are to this community, and I'm thankful for that. And my boss, Joel, for taking a chance on me in 1982. I was a police officer and changed careers and took a leap of faith, and the leap of faith worked out really well. And I've been honored to be able to do a lot of really cool things, and it really culminated 5 years ago with our adventure into One Safe Place and trying to put a stop to family violence in our community. So thank you all very much. I'm very honored, very surprised, and very thankful.
Well, I really want to thank you for your work on the One Safe Place. We have a number of agencies that are really focused on domestic violence, but this has really kind of brought those folks together. As I say often, there is never a reason for anyone to abuse their spouse or their children in any way, shape, or form, and y'all are helping hopefully eliminate that within our county. So thank you very, very much for your job.
Thank you, Judge.
Judge, could we recognize the presence of the distinguished mayor of the city of Burleson, the Honorable Ken Shetter?
I'm just here for a job.
Ken, thank you very much for being with us today. At this time, I'm going to call upon Sheriff Wayburn to come forward and to make a few presentations and introduce a few folks.
Judge and Commissioners, thank you for your time. And Commissioner Johnson, your proclamation there with John, he's been an integral part of public safety in Tarrant County and a great partner to both municipals and Tarrant County law enforcement. It's been incredible. This morning, thank you for your time, Commissioners, and just wanted to, we have started this morning, just had a ceremony earlier this morning in awarding some awards, and we just started the Quarterly Award of Excellence for outstanding individuals in each division of our department. and I wanted to bring it to the attention of the commissioners and the Tarrant County family. And these people have performed in the last quarter of the year of 2016 in such a manner that they were recognized not only by their supervisors but by their entire chain of command. And we have 6 of those this morning, and if I could have them stand, then you can see them. The first one is Ellen Brown. She's the assistant in the chaplain's office, and Ellen has done an incredible job over there in many, many regards and in helping out. And Dave Barrett was just one of her hugest fans, of course. Ellen also, just a matter of things, she ran in the last marathon here in Fort Worth, and she ran that 31 miles. Oh, my. And somebody said, that took about 7 hours. And she said, well, 6 hours and 44 minutes if anybody's counting. But also Officer Lee Brown has been with us for several years. He is in confinement. Officer Lee Brown has been with us for 12 years, and he's done a great job.
Sheriff?
Sir?
Commissioner Fickus.
I'm sorry?
No, I was just questioning why she ran the extra 5 miles on the marathon.
It was a
super marathon.
Super marathon.
Oh.
Super marathon.
Ultra marathon.
Ultra marathon. Yes,
Like
sir.
we needed something to be more than 26 miles.
I'm just glad you're not the wellness director.
That's it.
I didn't know whether she couldn't count or.
If they forgot to put up the finish line, and it just kept running.
Somebody was tricking her, you know.
Ellen, I didn't know we'd throw you under the bus, but there you go. Also, Officer Lee Brown, who's in confinement on 3rd shift. He has been with us for 12 years, and he was recognized for his above and beyond service out there where he took
Okay, I know we ran over you here. I'm sorry. We're going to back up for just a second because I don't. Is Marcel Jackson here?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Are they standing up or are they? Where are they? Where's Marcel?
Stand up here. There's Marcel's right there.
Okay.
Yeah, we
don't let them sit
oh,
down.
absolutely. Don't sit down. Deputy Andrew Caracciolo, common spelling. Where you at, Andrew? Andre's right back here. He's our deputy over in Northside Patrol. We do have Marcel Jackson, who is in medical and has done just an incredible job over there and been very innovative in treating prisoners. We also have Deputy Mark Smith. Where you at, Mark? He's back there. Mark is in judicial, and he has been again acknowledged because of his unofficial leadership and his ability to do his job. We got Roseanne Tucker, Officer Roseanne Tucker, who's on 3rd shift in confinement. She's in booking. Where you at, Roseanne? She's right back here. Their families are here with them this morning, but that is our recipients of the Officer of the Quarter of Excellence that we're going to maintain, and these guys have just done a great job, and we're excited about that. And guys, thank you all for being here, and commissioners, thank you for allowing us to recognize them. We did give out some other awards this morning, and I just wanted to go over them for you, and I'll have these folks stand also, as we had Deputy Christopher Carmichael this morning. And Chris was recognized just a few months ago, back in January. He's on our downtown patrol. And Chris's afternoon began when somebody was screaming from a vehicle at him, and he didn't know what to expect. But what he did is end up delivering a baby boy out there on our court parking lot. And and I don't know if the insurance is paid off yet or not, but Chris is ready to go if we need to deliver it again. But
you probably ought to go ahead and bill for the doctor charges associated with the delivery.
I'm right there with you, sir. But Chris is also an EMT and volunteer firefighter, so he had the skill set to do what he needed to do out there, and he did an incredible job. That baby was not breathing when it was born, and he was able to clear the airway and ask the mama to pinch the baby. He didn't do the old-fashioned slap on the behind, and the baby began to cry, and it was just a great moment. Deputy Paul Brinkman and also Deputy Scott Siebert received the life-saving awards this morning for the same incident where they had a attempted suicide at a home, and they were able to arrive on scene. They forced their way in, and the subject had hung themselves, and they reacted without hesitation, and Paul Brinkman held on to the person and lifted them up, while Scott cut the rope and was able to get them down and got him breathing again and got him successfully to the hospital. And and they see reason for life today because of these two. Otherwise, it would have been death indeed. But Scott Siebert and Paul Brinkley. We also have the life-saving award for Deputy Robert Meza. And Robert's right here with his family. And Robert's one of our reserve officers. He's been a reserve officer for 3 years. But just recently, back on December, he and another officer were on patrol, which we'll talk about in just a minute, and they arrived on the scene of a house that was fully involved in fire, and there's ammo blowing up inside. There was oxygen tanks blowing up. So it sounded like a war zone to these guys, but they heard voices inside, and Robert helped force their way into the house, and they located an elderly gentleman into the house under smoke and all that stuff going on, was able to get him out and save his life. And Robert stayed with him, and it was he and Andre that, who I'm going to introduce here in just a second, that took care of that. But one of our reserves right there. Deputy Robert Surga, who's here with his family this morning. Where are you at, Robert? Looking around. There you go. Robert came upon a car that there was a child that was trapped inside that had been there for several minutes, and the mom had accidentally locked him in the car. The heat was rising, and this was back in October, and of course in Texas it can get hot as blazes then. And Robert, the fire department tried to get the child out, and they had failed. Well, Robert took over the scene, and he just took control of the situation, broke out the glass, got the child out and safely to the hospital. But as we know, many times in this state over the years, we have a lot of casualties and deaths because of infants left in cars. And Robert, without hesitation, went in that car and got that child out before that happened. But also have another life-saving with Deputy Matthew Smith. Matthew made it this morning. Matthew came up on a motorcycle accident in which a 64-year-old man had an amputation of his leg and was bleeding from the leg. And somebody was out there trying to stop the bleeding, and they weren't getting it done. And, of course, a leg bleed can be very, very serious, but the entire leg was amputated. And Matthew, without hesitation and without proper protection, jumped right in, took a belt, and stopped the bleeding. You know, he created what needed to happen to save this person's life and get them there to the hospital. But this was a 64-year-old on a motorcycle. Not saying that motorcycles are dangerous, but there you have it.
But they are.
Yes, but they are. And I'd like to invite Deputy Andrew Corachulo up. And Andrew, on December the 30th, I'll just read this to you if I could. It was him and Robert Meza that responded to the assisted fire department. And upon arrival, they quickly saw that the primary residence and the vehicle were engulfed in flames. Without hesitation, Andre and Robert entered the residence and was able to get the elderly man out into safety. And of course, there was all this time the fire was going on. There was things exploding inside. And Andre, concerned with the safety of others that might be in the building, went back in and completely cleared the house, even being overcame in smoke inhalation, and made sure that nobody else was left in there. And then he cleared and came out. And this morning we awarded him a Medal of Valor. Thank you for your time. These people have performed in great appreciation of Tarrant County people and the SO, and they represent the best of us. And there's one other person I'd like to introduce to you is our new chaplain, Wes McDuffie. Where are you at, Wesley? Wesley McDuffie. He is our new chaplain. Wes has been in the chaplain business for over 20 years. He served with several police departments, including Dalworthington Gardens, Arlington Police Department. He's also helped Texas DPS on several occasions, the Department of Drug Enforcement. Wes is a veteran of 9/11. He was dispatched to 9/11 under the International Association of Chaplains. He also was dispatched and assisted and ran a lot of chaplain services during Katrina in New Orleans. He is the former president of the International Chaplains Association. But we're excited about Wes. He is ordained out of Mount Olive Baptist Church under the legendary Reverend Robinson. And And we're excited about having Wes on board, and we've already been working him to death. And he is at your service as well as our other departments. Thank you.
Sheriff, thank you very much for being here this morning and recognizing these folks. We're very, very proud of all of you and your service. Once again, I think we as Tarrant County residents have an awful lot to be proud of as we see our employees go beyond the call of duty and to get in there and to really do whatever they can to be of service to our public. So let's give them one more big round of applause. Court members, I don't know how we kind of go on from this. Next time we may do it at the end because it's very difficult to then turn around and have deal with the minutia. Minutia is the nice word for it. I could make it a little bit different.
The important people's business.
I guess. You have before you our consent agenda.
Move approval. Second.
We have motion and second to approve the consent agenda. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. We probably need to do a receive and file on the recognition.
So moved.
Second.
We have motion and second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Manius.
Thank you, Your Honor. Before we get into my section, I have one additional agenda announcement. I've simply missed it. On facilities management, item 8E1. This is the construction management contract with Conrail. We're going to hold that for 1 week. We will bring all the documents back to you for approval next week. Members of the Court, we go to the Administrator's section on item number requesting that the Commissioners' Court approve a contract with the Access Group for the filming of a television commercial by that particular group in our historic courthouse.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have motion and second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Members of the Court, if we could go to item number 2, we're requesting that the Commissioners' Court approve the First Amendment to a commercial lease agreement between the Hospital District and Fellowship of the Sword for a portion of the building which is located at 700 Bedford Euless Road in Hurst, and described as relates in your court communication. This particular item was approved by the Board of Managers on March 9th, and we're seeking Commissioners' Court approval.
Move approval.
Second.
We have motion and second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Finally, members of the Court, on item number 3, we're requesting that the Commissioners' Court approve a commercial lease agreement between the Tarrant County Hospital District and Lighthouse for the Homeless as it relates to clinic space at 1513 East Presidio Street in Fort Worth. This also was approved by the Board of Managers and recommended by the Board of Managers on March 9th of this year.
Move approval.
Second.
We have motion and second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ms. Tidwell.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We have 3 items we're asking the court to consider. First item is to approve the release of and substitution of depository collateral for the $19,936,000 as outlined in your court communique.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Our next item is to receive and file the auditor's report of parking for FY 2016. You have the department's response attached. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
And the third item is to receive and file the auditor's report related to the registry of the court accounts held by the county clerk for the period ended September 30th, 2016.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Phillips.
Morning, David.
Good morning.
Morning.
It's requested that Commissioners Court approve a possession and use agreement with the Fort Worth Transportation Authority related to the TexRail project for 3,031 square feet of county-owned property behind 1815 Cold Springs Road in Fort Worth.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Move to receive and file personnel agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file the personnel agenda. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. We have, and good morning.
Good morning.
We have 3 additional items for the court. The second item is that we're asking the court to approve an out-of-class pay extension for JP3. This is an item that you've seen a few times now. Judge Casey is requesting the extension of out-of-class pay effective March the 24th. If approved, this extension will then take us through June the 21st. We're looking at an estimated cost of approximately $635 to the general fund.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
So item number 3 is a twofold request. We're asking, or Constable Woodruff is asking for permission to double fill a position and also for a waiver for his department. His office manager is going to retire at the end of this month. He has found a replacement, and the total cost for both of these items, if approved, will be approximately $2,437, again, to the general fund.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
And for our final item, we're asking the court to approve the 19th Annual Tarrant County Employee Picnic at Six Flags over Texas. We are requesting today approval of the contract for this event, and we're also requesting a 10% deposit, which is typical. That deposit is approximately $5,454, and there is money in our current budget.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Okay, I got a question. 10% deposit. Now, aren't we saying up here, wasn't the total cost about $20,000?
Well, what we're asking for is 1,200 tickets at a cost of $45.45. And so that total is $5,000 or whatever, $5,400, and 10% of that. 10% of that amount that Mr. Manius just said.
So we're talking about $500?
We're asking for $5,454 today.
Cost will be
10% of the 50-something
It's
thousand.
10% of that.
54,540.
Correct.
Exactly right.
That amount times 10.
54,000?
That's what it says right here.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
But I think the 54,000, do the employees pay a portion? Or is it
Yes,
all-
sir. The employees will pay $28 per ticket.
See, that's what we're paying, 17 they're paying.
Correct.
Our portion is is not quite 21,000 of that amount.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. I'll bring my calculator the next time.
We had 1,500 employees participated in this. It's a good program.
While Mr. Beecham is coming down, I will announce that, Texas Wesleyan got the NAIA. They won last night. It's not the championship yet, I think. But
They'll be in the
UTA
championship
won
game.
last night, and they're moving on, and TCU is going to play tonight.
And Arkansas is out.
And Arkansas is out. So Ole Miss is
Kentucky.
Actually, because of the Tar Heels.
Ole Miss is Ole Miss. So I don't want to hear anything about what happened long ago. What do you got for us over there, Mr. Beecham?
We got to dance for a little while.
Yeah.
It was a good dance.
And I had the opportunity Friday to go to God's country, and I was signing out.
You go to East Texas?
I was signing out on our checkout board, and I turned to Janice Anderson, who is our new cooperative purchasing coordinator. I said, I made it to God's country. And she quizzically looked at me. She said, Israel? You just sometimes don't ask the right questions in a job interview.
Is Ron Wright down there this morning?
No.
Well, there's nobody else here from Arkansas that's going to give you any support.
I'll bring greetings and a check this morning. It's our privilege this morning to ask the court to accept the rebate check from Staples for our office supply cooperative contract. 50 entities participated this year in an all-time high sharing process of $412,360.38. We are pleased to bring to the court a rebate check, which is the largest ever, of $338,719. 1924.
Wow.
Just hold it up a little bit higher, it looks a lot better. And I want to note that you said 412. The difference is they offered us a larger rebate last year, or a couple of years ago, and we passed that along to the participating entities in this deal.
Exactly. The scale is a sliding scale of 2.5% to 4.5%. Tarrant County's take is a flat 3%. In the future, this next year, with maybe your suggestive powers, I'd certainly like to see some greater participation this side of the river, maybe from the city of Fort Worth, DFW International Airport, and JPS, unless they don't need the money.
Where do you go?
Well, we do appreciate Staples' participation, and that's a good point. We did offer the increase to the entities, and it's a very successful project, and Staples has done an outstanding job for these 50 entities, and they had other things to do this morning, but asked me to give you folks their regards. Thank you.
Do I have a motion to receive and file?
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Our last item is a bid award recommendation for bid 2017-078.
Jack, before you go on, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I'm hearing that Staples is not doing very well. What's going to happen with, what's the plan?
Well, they've closed some retail stores, but their contract sales are very good. We've had conversations, no
issue?
No issues on that I've heard so far. We'll obviously watch that. Can't promise you that we'll get this kind of a rebate every year. It's based on everybody's spend, but they've been on the upswing, and the greater the participation, the more likely that we will be able to keep our return at that level.
Okay. So the box stores are going out, but the
some of them are.
Yes,
sir, some. Their contract sales are doing very well. In fact, they've had a banner year in furniture sales in the past. They're getting much larger and much more aggressive in that pricing structure than they have in the past.
Thank you for that.
Our second item is a bid award recommendation for bid 2017-078. Bidding for the purchase and installation of a 2D sonic tracker system for a John Deere motor grader for precinct number 3. Recommendation be toward GeoShack Inc. in the amount of $21,840.24.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is that so you can track where it goes, or is that so it can track where it's doing?
I think it tracks what it's doing.
Good. I was hoping we were going to have to track where it goes. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Just a minute, Your Honor.
You know, they got some pretty fancy hard software on those.
Yep.
All kinds of that John Deere stuff.
They all
green?
They can go out in the field and they can tell you if you got enough fertilizer here, and if you don't, they'll put more down. And then you move 100 yards and you maybe need less. And it's all done by satellite.
Too much information.
Too much information.
We have one more item. Item in regards to RFP 2017-056, the Microsoft Office 365 assessment implementation. We are suggesting that we reject all proposals, and been told that this can be handled internally rather than spend the money on the outside.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Skinner.
Morning, Judge.
Good morning.
Good morning. Today we are seeking court action concerning a projects and funding partnership between the North Central Texas Council of Governments Regional Transportation Council, the City of Fort Worth, and Tarrant County related to the programming of 2006 Transportation Bond Program funds as described in your court communication, and rescinding court order number 105514.
I will move approval.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any appointments today? There being none, then you have before you the claims, including the addendum.
Move approval of the claims, including the addendum.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the claims, including the addendum. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Briefing items, Mr. Daniels?
Thank you, Your Honor. We are going to be presenting 3 different briefing items this morning. The first one is the monthly update from the hospital district. Mr. Early is here to address the board at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Manius. Judge, Commissioners, thank you all very much. A couple things I want to recognize. Charlie Powell, a.k.a. Johnny Cash, over here. Our board meetings get a little tough sometimes, so he's in a sling. He just wasn't listening to some of his colleagues, and they talked to him a bit. So, yeah. He was the one against the Staples deal. A couple things. I've mentioned to y'all before public health and the leadership that Vinny brings to public health and the cooperative, collaborative spirit that has existed between JPS and public health, which we're proud of. And I will update you constantly to let you know of that relationship that we have. But I thought today, in particular with the awards that the sheriff gave out, the impressive nature of the sheriff's office, chief of staff, and the sheriff called us at JPS and said, we need to figure out everything that JPS does, why and how. And the cooperative spirit of our sheriff was unbelievable. And his willingness to work with us, help us in that clinic. That is a tough clinic. Things do not go well always in that clinic because it's a hard clientele. And you have a tough partnership in trying to get people to take their meds. And you have a tough time trying to realize what is a real situation and what may not be a real situation. And I will tell you that the sheriff and his staff have been very impressive. And the team of doctors that we have over there, technicians and nurses, have all complimented the sheriff's staff. So, Sheriff, I want to personally thank you for the attitude that you've had towards the inmates and the attitude that you've had to us trying to be of service to you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. We have coming up a couple ceremonies that are pretty powerful. There is a Doctor's Day that we have at JPS, and we will be honoring 600 of our doctors, and we're going to honor them by having the executive team serve them breakfast, and then we're all going to serve them lunch. And we've asked them at lunch if they would invite their spouses to a lunch at JPS, because spouses are oftentimes unrecognized for the amount of time they are away from their spouses, particularly in the healthcare field. And so we're going to do that. I will tell you publicly that staff at JPS are very upset with me because we are sending out invitations to all 600 doctors. And I want every member of the executive team to personally sign every one of those. So I'm going to stay down here a little bit longer today because no one is happy with me back home. But we will sign every one of those 600 cards for every one of those doctors. I don't know they'll notice, but we will.
Where are you going to serve all this food for that many people? At JPS?
They all won't be there at one time, but we've sort of regulated that so it won't, because we can't. But we have the one room that we have all of our functions in. It's the same room we'll have the board meeting in. So we will do that in a manner that we have regulated. Not everybody's going to attend. All 600 are not going to attend at one time.
Did you invite Tom Wilder?
No, I did not. We only have so much food, Commissioner. So I gotta be conscientious as a taxpayer.
What day are you doing this on?
We're doing it on March 30th, and y'all are more than welcome.
Come and serve.
To come and serve or eat, either one. And also, relationship to the sheriff's office. We, about 6 months ago, gave a tour to community leaders in El Paso. And El Paso had been impressed with what we were doing at JPS. So they brought about 30 leaders from El Paso, including the new CEO of the public hospital. County commissioners came, and some others came, and leaders in the community came from El Paso. The sheriff of El Paso was unable to make that, so on March 24th, this week, we're giving a tour to the sheriff's office, and what they want to know is how we deal with our behavioral health program and how we deal with people on the streets in our efforts and y'all's efforts to make sure that the largest mental health institution in Tarrant County is not our county jail. And they're impressed with some of the things that we're doing. So we're going to spend the day with them in our behavioral and psychiatric services, and then the sheriff's going to spend time with the sheriff's department. But I just want you to know that's a nice compliment when other entities in Texas want to come tour JPS to see how we're doing things. We also are giving tours on the 24th and the 28th to the Blue Ribbon Committee. We have an extensive tour for the Blue Ribbon Committee. We're going to show them everything we can possibly show them to give them a fair idea of what JPS is. We'll show them some of our newer units. We'll show them some of our older units. We'll show them our rooms. We'll show them our Trinity Springs Psychiatric Pavilion, Behavioral Health, emergency room, of course, and everything else. We'll also take them out to our clinics, let them see our clinics. We'll let them see the flow. You saw a lot of the reports about the flow of JPS and where buildings are and how you transport one patient from one place to the other. We're going to walk them on that so they get a better understanding from what's on a piece of paper to what's in reality at JPS. So Mr. Manius and his staff have been hugely helpful to us in arranging those tours. And I think that will be very enlightening for them, and they can form their own decisions. That's not us persuading, that's just us showing them what we have. The question that I was asked probably more than any question 4.5 years ago was, what is the Affordable Health Care Act going to do to JPS? And there was a series of gloom and doom questions that if the Affordable Health Care Act was ever passed, you would not have a need for a public hospital. That did not prove to be the case. The question that I'm being asked now on a daily basis is, what's going to happen when they take away the Affordable Health Care Act? I do not know the answer to that. I'm not sure that some of our elected officials in Washington quite know now exactly where they may be going, and I know that Speaker Ryan is trying really hard to put together compromise and move forward on that. But I want you to know that JPS, in regards to that, is going to be as nimble as possible. You cannot plan ahead like you want to. I know that you all and community leaders ask for answers, and I will not know those answers. But when those answers come down from Washington, we will be as prepared if they do away with it as we were when they put it into place. That's what we do at JPS, and that's what we'll always do. And it's the same thing with the 1115 waiver. Y'all are going to get a report on what's happening legislatively. There's always a time period where you just flat don't know. And we'll be prepared. If the 1115 waiver were not to be funded, then those positions that are helping fund those projects right now would obviously not be needed. But those projects and programs are playing a key role in what we do right now, and we are efficient with them. Some of those programs have made us more efficient and saved tax dollars by doing them. So we'll look on them on an annual basis. There's not an easy answer to it, but we'll go through the process and look and see what happens with the 1115 waiver, what the federal government may do in its extension or not extension, but we'll handle those issues as they come up. So I didn't want to tell you I'm trying to be evasive or elusive in any way. You just don't know the answers. But what happens both in Austin and what happens in Washington, we'll be very prepared. And that's what we do. So we have staffs and teams looking at, if we get it increased, what will we do? If we get it reduced, what will we do? If they don't do it, what will we do? So that's the update from JPS. I appreciate it. Wanted y'all to know what we're doing, tours we're giving, and thank the Sheriff's Office.
Just for the sake of clarity, the so-called Obamacare is the Affordable Care Act. Trump Care is the Affordable Health Care Act.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. For clarity, you're right, and I appreciate that. The vernacular has changed a couple times on those, but you're exactly correct. Thank you.
You know, I guess the one comment I would make, though, is just what you're saying. I don't care what the feds do to us. I don't care what the state does to us. When it comes down to who's going to deal with the people, it's the county. It's folks like you. It's folks like the sheriff. It's folks like all the elected officials that we have. And they can pass whatever law and they can send whatever dollars they want to. But when it ultimately comes down to it, we are the ones that are going to deal with the people who come to us and for whatever reason, and have either a problem or we have to take care of them because they did something that was a problem. And that's why, you know, the Blue Ribbon Committee is going to be important, because regardless, healthcare is always changing, and it changes just about every 3 or 4 years. They decide what they're going to call the reimbursement that they're going to give to us and what they're going to reimburse. But ultimately, the people come to your emergency room or come to the clinics, and they've got a need, and we're going to find a way to try to take care of that. And I think what gives me reassurance is that we have good people at JPS. We have good people in our departments and our elected officials who realize that regardless of what they do, we've still got a job that's got to get done, and we'll find a way to do it. And I also thank the members of this court because we're fiscally sound, and so while we are waiting for dollars at times, we've got the dollars here to still be able to provide and do what we have to do to the folks who walk in their door, and they don't want to hear that Washington or Austin has said we can't take care of them. They just want to be taken care of. The Blue Ribbon Committee met, I think, a couple of weeks ago, and I've asked Mr. Manus, I think I would like for us to begin getting an update immediately following any of those meetings. And I know, you know, y'all who are the liaisons can come back and give us a report on that, or we can simply do that through a regular deal. But we talked about during the original part is that while they were going to be updating the Blue Ribbon Committee, the consultants, it needs to be ongoing and very much, I feel, in track with what's going on there. And I'd rather not wait a couple of months. I mean, if there's going to be a Blue Ribbon meeting, the next court meeting, I'd like for us to be updated on it, and go through that process. And if it's coming
is
or HMA, if they're making a report to the Blue Ribbon Committee to some extent, I'd like at least, maybe not as long of a report, but at least them to follow up the following week or as soon as possible and give us a summary of that report. It may not have to be them individually, but it could be somebody from that group.
And if it's agreeable to the court, I would also recommend that we do the same with the Board of Managers at JPS, because a lot of information is coming down the pipe. Lots of information, hundreds of pages. If we wait until the last minute, it will be information overload for the decision makers. So it would be a prudent effort if we regularly update the decision makers so that everybody can gradually process these complex information. So I agree with your suggestion, Judge.
We have thank you for your comments, Judge, earlier, and Commissioner Wynn, thank you. We have a process by which, we have our two Board of Manager liaisons that serve. They provide their colleagues with updates, and then we also go through our planning committee where they make presentations, and then we'll go to full board. So we'll continue to do that. I thank y'all, and I thank you for your pragmatism, and I thank you for the reality of which the sheriff and I and public health and others see the reality of what is on paper sometimes from a legislative pen, and we deal with the reality of it. And there's not a better county to live in for the approach that you all have taken to deal with that. And I think the judge is exactly right. This is where the rubber meets the road, and we deal with the people that show up at our county jail, show up at our hospital, and they're not pieces of paper. It's life, and we need to figure out how to deal with it. So I thank you all for the approach that you've taken towards me and to JPS.
And on a lighter note, Robert, I appreciate if you make a change. I noticed that you and Charlie have taken extreme leadership in which you were willing to injure your body to assure quality of care. But I might suggest there may be a better approach to that.
I understand. We are involuntary secret shoppers. Thank you very much.
Yeah, because you weren't very secret about it. Let me just say that.
I tried.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you
very
much.
much.
Thank you all very much.
Members of the court, we can go to item B on the briefing. This is a briefing by the District Attorney's Office. It It involves the Intimate Partner Violence Unit. Ms. Wilson is here to address the court at this time.
Thank you. Judge and Commissioners, in the last budget season, you all funded an Intimate Partner Violence Unit as part of the District Attorney's Office, and we want to give you a little update on what happened then. And you'll remember at our presentation then we had some of our community partners with us, and we've asked them to come back today because you might actually have some questions of them about some of the changes that we've made since that unit started in the last 6 to 8 months. So with us today, and before I took office, I got a call from Ken Cheddar and John Joyce, and they said, we need to talk to you about domestic violence in Tarrant County because you don't realize what a problem it is. And the truth is, I didn't. And even though I'd spent 23 years on the bench, I didn't have a concept of what the actual problem was in Tarrant County or the impact it was having on them as well as our police agencies. Because over half last year of our capital murder instances were family violence instances, over half. So beside them is Catherine Jacob, who is the Executive Director of Safe Haven. They are one of our they are the provider of treatment programs for not only the battered woman, but also the batterer. And then Daryl Imperiman, who's with our office, Victim Assistance, is beside her. The police, we've started really working with, and they're here, some of the chiefs are here, Chief Steve Moore, Chief Jimmy Perdue from North Richland Hills, you know, Steve's from Hearst, and Chief Jeff Gibson from Bedford. So these three chiefs in the Northeast and some others are very progressive in how they think and what they do, and we've been working with them on a different way of handling domestic violence cases for first offenses, because we don't want to just be dealing with the most serious ones, you know, our capital murders, but we want to try to stop the flow from the beginning. So today I have Art Clayton and Alana Bangs. They're going to be presenting our brief PowerPoint, and they'll be able to answer your questions, but I wanted you to make sure that you knew who was here from our community partners, because it's been an important effort. Art and Alana.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'd like to start out and say thank you for putting together this unit. It was important. The work we're doing is important. And by approving the creation of this unit, I look at every one of you as part of that. And it's important to be part of something when it gets going. So the unit. We are composed of 5 attorneys. Myself, Art Clayton, Assistant Chief Alana Bangs, who's one of our very talented trial lawyers. In the back row, we have Chris McGregor, also an excellent trial lawyer. Cammie Gildner, also an excellent trial lawyer. And Zane Reed, who can't be here today because he's currently in trial. Our investigators are Darren Gabbert, who's feeling a little bit ill today and stayed home, so we don't get what he has. David Wisenhunt, and yesterday we've added Brian Moody as another investigator. Julie Cathy is our secretary. So what have we been doing? We've been seeking to change the culture of intimate partner violence prosecution. We're changing our focus to the offender, looking at what he did. We're seeking to hold him accountable. When I wrote this presentation, we had 6 trials in 6 trial weeks. And now it's 7 in 7 trial weeks. We've been very busy. We're engaging in what we're seeking to do is evidence-based prosecution. And what that means is that is a change not only for the district attorney's office, but it's a change for law enforcement, because the officer out in the field gathers that evidence for us. On these kinds of cases, the victims, all too often, it's the lady, she's not going to be as cooperative as time goes past. So the opportunity to get that evidence is there in the field. So we're talking to the officers about preserving and collecting that evidence. We're seeking to prove cases through exceptions to the hearsay rule, which is a new way of doing business at the district attorney's office, but it's a trend that's been engaged in statewide. And we're seeking to hold these defendants accountable for their conduct. Each case is different. Every scenario is different. Sometimes the goal is to put him away in prison as long as we can, and sometimes it's just to hold him accountable for what he did. And that is a challenge at times. Our first case that we had was the very first week. That was a case that Cammie and I had. That was in the 432nd. In that case, the defendant got angry at his wife. When she asked him about a phone call, he put his hands on her face, pulled her hair, pulled her to the ground, and struck her with his hand. He squeezed her neck. She told him she couldn't breathe, but didn't lose consciousness. He was probation eligible, and he did not have any violent criminal history, and all she wanted to do is see him take responsibility. Well, we showed up the first week of trial availability for this year. I got up and gave the voir dire, and he pled guilty after that, and he was held accountable. Our second trial was Andy Fields. He was charged with assault bodily injury with a prior. The defendant had come into the home of his ex-girlfriend. He was carrying a beer in his hand. He struck her in her face. She told him to leave, and he didn't like that. He struck her several times and strangled her. The victim called out for her daughter to come to her aid. When the daughter came into the room, she tried to get the defendant off of her. He then assaulted her. The defendant was a habitual offender. He had priors dating back to the 1980s. He was sentenced to 50 years in the 213th District Court. Zane Reed tried that case. He's currently in trial today. Our next case, that case was tried by Chris McGregor and Casey Fickus, who's not in the unit. The defendant in this case had been dating the victim for 5 months. After they'd broken up, he invited her and several other people over for a party. Later in the evening, he came up behind the victim and he stabbed her in the neck. He continued to stab her multiple times. She tried to fend him off. She eventually had to go to the hospital. He was previously a convicted felon with priors for aggravated assault, violation of protective order, and burglary of habitation. Like I said, he got 70 years. And when we talk about this case, our partners in the community are looking at us going, 70 years in the penitentiary for a family violence case. We never thought that could have happened. You know, and I've been a prosecutor 17 and a half years. And I'll tell you, it's a new day. And it's a new way of doing business on these kinds of cases. Our next defendant, Darian Lane. This case was held in Criminal District Court number 1. He was charged with assault, bodily injury, family violence, and choking. He was sentenced to 15 and 10 years. This case was tried by Elena Bangs and Cammie Gildner. In this case, the defendant came to the home of his ex-girlfriend to get his things and to celebrate their child's birthday. The victim had fallen asleep, but later was awoken by the defendant. He'd gone through her phone. He'd found some messages there he didn't like. He assaulted her, striking her with his hand, strangling her with an extension cord, and threatened her with a knife. The victim had visible ligature marks around her neck. The victim was not cooperative with our office. The defendant and she had had another child, and he had assaulted her again while he was out on bond. And Elena and Cammie did an excellent job of finding this information through social media and other avenues on the internet. They subpoenaed her, and when Darren went and served our victim with the subpoena, she rolled up her window and drove away. And she did not show up for her subpoena. So what Elena and Cammie did is they proved up the state's case through something called forfeiture by wrongdoing, which is the first time I'd ever heard of that being done here in this jurisdiction. It's basically where we show the defendant's actions have done something to keep the victim from appearing in court. The defendant was found guilty and he was sentenced to the penitentiary. That was an excellent, excellent effort. Our next case, Donald Dwayne Graves. In this case, the victim called 911 and reported that her fiance was holding a gun to her and he threatened to shoot her. He then shot her in the head and shot himself. She was paralyzed and he recovered. This case was tried in the 371st District Court. He was sentenced to life in prison. McMichael Yawwood. This was a misdemeanor case, and I went down and tried that in the misdemeanor courts. It's one of those situations where no job too big, no job too small. This case came out of the city of Southlake. In this case, the victim and the defendant were in a dating relationship. The defendant took a drink out of her soda pop, something kind of innocuous. And she didn't like that. Well, he pulled over. They were driving around the city of Southlake just outside the town square, town center. It was the day after Christmas, a lot of traffic on the roadway. He took that soda pop and he poured it all over her and began to strike her with his hands and his elbow. There was a passing motorist going down the roadway. His name was Aaron Craig. He was a former veteran. He saw this going down. He got out of his car. He pulled his sidearm and held him at bay until the police arrived. As we were preparing for trial, the victim in this case, for the last year, was not cooperative with our office, would not return phone calls. We even reached out to the Harris County District Attorney's Office and sent out an investigator trying to get her in court. And one of the concerns we had is when she showed up for trial is that she was going to lie. And there was something that was said by the cross-examination of the defense that her story was changed. We had to get an attorney appointed to represent her, to advise her of her rights if she were to lie. And I wouldn't sponsor her as a witness. The defense called her, and she totally changed her story from being, he hit me 15 times in the face, bless you, to he didn't strike me at all. We had eyewitnesses to him hitting her. Well, that defendant was convicted. These types of offenses, they hit all groups of people, all socioeconomic groups. This defendant was a petroleum engineer, and she was studying for her PhD. When she got done testifying, she came to me and she put her hand on my arm and said, "I'm sorry." That's the type of work we're doing.
What made this case a misdemeanor?
It was a misdemeanor, sir. To assault a family member and just cause bodily injury is a misdemeanor, sir. It's the first offense. It hasn't been enhanced to be a third-degree felony. This man had no criminal history whatsoever. It's a very good question. Thank you.
So does the person who perjured themselves on the stand?
She did testify, yes.
She did testify?
Yes, sir.
So what happens to her as a result of her perjuring herself?
Typically, we don't prosecute perjurers because it's too many cases.
Well, that's reassuring. Well, I mean,
Okay, so let me just, 23 years on the bench, people lie on the stand. Or you think they've lied, maybe they've just changed their story. They're difficult cases to prove. It requires a lot of prosecutorial assets, and we haven't come to you and asked for a unit or the personnel to do those prosecutions.
I understand that there's a lot of instances where it may be very difficult to prove, but when you have somebody holding a gun on the guy that saw him beating the hell out of the woman, then that doesn't seem like that would be difficult to prove.
Right, so he beats the hell out of her, and then we prosecute her for lying to stay with him after she has a child with him. We didn't.
Let's go on. Thank you. So currently, we're assigned 380 cases. These cases involve homicide, sexual assaults, aggravated assaults, strangulation, assaults, and burglaries. The case assignment criteria utilizes the lethality assessments. We do this to address the needs of victims most at risk in our jurisdiction. And what have we been doing? We've been seeking to improve lines of communication on protective orders. Our protective order unit is housed in a different building. And about a year ago, we had a training where all that personnel was brought over and basically introduced to the rest of the office because we don't interact with them. We didn't interact with them very well. And that's something that we're trying to change. We now have an online application process for protective orders. And nearly on every case, we're reaching out and we're speaking to that personnel about these ladies and seeking a safety plan with them. We've engaged in training internally within the unit. We use our bond conditions to protect our victims. We use them as a shield. And we're contacting victims more quickly. We're engaging in that safety planning. In fact, last night, David and I and Zane, when he got out of trial, sat up with a lady on a new case till about 7:30, trying to see how we can keep her safe. She's a victim of a guy we believe to be in the Aryan Brotherhood. So we're working with law enforcement. We're exploring focused deterrence models that were introduced through One Safe Place. And we do appreciate John, Joyce, we appreciate your efforts, and Ken Shedders and Catherine Jacobs over at Safe Haven. Those models were introduced through One Safe Place. We're facilitating training and new ways of looking at IPV cases. We've reworked our family violence packet. We're about to share that with law enforcement. And we're improving lines of communication with law enforcement agencies. We recently engaged in a week-long training with law enforcement on focused deterrence. And I've never seen anything done like that with the district attorney's office. I've never seen that done here in Tarrant County. And it's pretty awesome. We had over 100 officers, and I want to thank again Chief Gibson, Chief Moore, and Chief Perdue for all your efforts. Thank you very much. We're also looking at how we build the case for punishment. We're looking at Article 38.371, the Texas Code of Criminal Procedure, and how that affects officers and how it affects prosecutors. What that section of the Code of Criminal Procedure allows us to do is bring in evidence of the relationship, much like you could do in homicide cases for years. And you could show every call out, the law enforcement who showed up on a Friday night every time he ever got paid and got drunk and acted like an idiot and hit her. And you can explain her conduct in court today why it may be a little different. So we have some tools that we're using and we're trying to do the best we can. Alana Bangs has been doing an excellent job on our adult fatality review. She's going to visit with you all about that.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Recently, I believe it was voted here to change this, the code portion where Safe Haven and Ms. Jacobs used to handle the adult fatality review here in Tarrant County, and now we at the District Attorney's Office are handling that. Catherine helped me a great deal moving into that position and to take it over, but the purpose is to review the fatalities that have happened as a result of intimate partner violence in order to try and address some of the gaps in services that might have taken place that might have prevented those deaths. And so we were caught up through 2012. So what we did was try and move through the deaths that took place in 2013 and 2014 to get caught up so that we can talk about more the cases that are more recent so that we can try and identify what we could be doing right now as opposed to things that were happening 4 and 5 years ago. So we have had our first meeting. We reviewed every case from 2013 and 14, and that is 21 incidents. So 21 deaths. There would be more deaths than that because quite a few of them were murder-suicides, but 21 innocent victims that were killed that we reviewed with our committee, which included our office, obviously Safe Haven, One Safe Place, MHMR, JPS was present, all of the hospital districts were present, so that we could review kind of where these people had had touches with service to see what we could have done. One major thing that has come out of adult fatality review, not just for our county, but also with Dallas County, who has had this system up and running, is that there has been a gap in service with the screening process amongst the hospitals. So a case that was reviewed, much of the abuse had taken place in Dallas, and then her death eventually happened here in Tarrant County. She had been seen at JPS on more than one occasion for slip and falls that were actually stab wounds. So JPS has taken the banner on that and has really run with it and formed a coalition with the hospital districts across the entire Metroplex. And we've signed a memorandum of agreement to work with them to try and come up with a uniform standardized screening across the hospitals, because screening isn't being done properly in terms of screening women or men for domestic violence in their home. And so that's one major thing that has come out of the adult fatality review that we're really proud of and that we're really looking forward to help working with over the next couple of years. So that's just one thing that's come up in our first meeting, and again 21 deaths, and we intend to move into the 2015 and 16 deaths in the next couple quarters. Questions about that? Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
I have one question.
Yes, sir, Commissioner Mann.
I applaud your effort in doing this. I think it's really important.
I'll say
it's
everybody's effort. I mean, they're a great team.
Do you have safeguard in place to make sure that we don't accidentally over-criminalize people?
Over-criminalize?
Yeah. Do you have safeguard in place to make sure that doesn't happen?
So every prosecutor's job is to do justice, okay, and to weigh the evidence, make sure that we're doing the right thing in every case, okay. So when you say safeguards, what we're doing is we're looking as to what happened that night. And all too often with the evidence-based prosecution, what we're focusing on are what are the photographs showing, what are the in-car videos and lapel cameras showing, what's that 911 call? Because as close in time as we can get, we believe that to be the most reliable evidence of what happened on that night. These victims, they are dealing with a set of pressures. You know, a lot of times they have children in common, they have economic difficulties, they share a home, they're financially dependent upon their offender. So it puts them in a situation where they need that defendant. Now, by contacting them more quickly and extending services to those ladies, we take that out of the equation, and we can focus on what the evidence is. We can focus on what he did to hold him accountable.
Okay, thank you.
I applaud you for using the gender-neutral term, intimate partner, but when you speak of victims, you leave the gender-neutral realm and you speak about she and her as the victim, where increasingly men are becoming victims of intimate partner violence. Have you seen such cases in Tarrant County?
So-
And do men receive the same types of assistance when they are the victim?
Thank you, Commissioner Brooks. Yes, sir. So internally within our office, what we did is we tagged all of our cases or looked at all of our cases that involved intimate partner violence, and I went through those felony cases. I would say the number is below 10%, maybe closer to 5% that involves males as victims or same-sex violence among partners. It's a low number.
You may grant that males are probably less likely to report intimate
Absolutely,
partner violence.
absolutely. And in the cases where we do have them, when we talk to those men, that's what they tell us. This person has been assaulted me numerous times, just like on the other side when our ladies are victims. The same services that exist for the ladies or exist for the men, the counseling, the placement, any of those things that we can do, we would extend them. Yeah. Any other questions?
Thank you.
I think Ken stepped up.
I just wanted to add, on behalf of the advocacy agencies that have been partners in the effort. First of all, the kind of partnership that's been created is a dream come true for us. Since the day we started One Safe Place, we really hoped for a day that we would see this kind of policy in place. And so the first thing I think it's important for people to understand is what this does in a big picture kind of way. It sends the message that when there is an incident of domestic violence, it's not really up to the victim to get to decide whether or not there's a prosecution or whether or not someone should be held accountable. It is a prosecution decision. It's a law enforcement decision. And what that does is it takes the responsibility off of the victim. And it removes one way that an offender, an abuser, has another opportunity to control their victim. So it is a really important day in Tarrant County. And to the question of over-criminalizing domestic violence, one of the things I'd say is for all of human history, in many ways, domestic violence has been under-criminalized. It has been considered to be a problem that happens within the confines of a home and between two people, and that is not the case. It is a crime against the state. It is a criminal act, and a person who is an abuser is not just dangerous to their victim, they are dangerous to society at large, and it's important as a matter of policy to recognize that. And then the other thing is that this broader policy of focused deterrence that this is really a part of, as a principle, takes into account that we ought to look at offenders and really assign sort of a danger level to different offenders and treat them according to that danger level the same way that we do to victims, so that we begin to look at first-time offenders and really try to get them the services they need to help avoid situations where we have multiple offenses and a long time or even short-term increasing level of violence within a relationship. And then this concept of focused deterrence says we need to take offenders who we all can recognize are more dangerous not only to their victim, their individual victim, but to society at large, and we need to take more aggressive efforts to try to get them out of the home where they're a danger and off of the streets where they're also a danger. So as a matter of policy, really for the first time, you're looking at this tactically and strategically, and you're not treating everyone that is an abuser or that is the same. And I think that's an important policy shift. And then, Judge Whitley, to your question about victims who changed their testimony, I want to add to the legal reason that you wouldn't try to prosecute all those people for perjury. There's a policy reason as well. And that is, first we have to understand that there are lots of reasons that victims of domestic violence become uncooperative. And some of them are really rational in that person's mind. Some of them relate to the fact that they feel like that's the safest thing for them to do. And there is a history of, in domestic violence, as victims work to become more independent or to leave relationships, abusers are more likely to step up the violence. And so victims over time, particularly, you got to remember, this is a new day in Tarrant County. The policies that you're hearing haven't always been the policies. As is the case in a lot of places, there's not a great history of holding abusers domestic violence abusers accountable, and so victims are conditioned to believe that at the end of the day, not much is going to happen, and they're going to be left vulnerable, and at the end of the day, in more danger than they were when they started. And then you add to that the fact that if we had a broad policy of punishing victims who at some point change their account or their story, then you would have an overall effect of really providing a disincentive for victims to come forward in the first place. So,
Ken, I think you know how I feel about this.
I absolutely know how you feel.
I guess what I would say, though, is that if you're going to try to have a policy that on first offense,
right,
you're trying to inject yourself in and hopefully make a difference and be able to maintain it. So, yes, there needs to be that. But I think when you go out and hire an attorney to counsel with a witness about perjury, and then they perjure themselves, then I don't believe it is our responsibility to become the judge and jury in that process.
No, that's absolutely right.
Look at the prosecution of it, and if you're not going to worry about whether the story has changed, then there's no reason to hire an attorney, an independent attorney, to go in there and counsel the witness or about the possibility of perjuring themselves.
Right. Yeah, and I on principle, I don't disagree at all, and I do know where you stand on this, and all of y'all have been tremendously supportive. There is an approach in Tarrant County to domestic violence from the advocacy side and law enforcement side that really at this point is unprecedented. We can take what's happening in this county, and it is becoming a model for everywhere in the country. So I think the story to tell to victims of domestic violence is we are taking the monkey off of your back. This is not up to you. It's not your responsibility. The relationship is between law enforcement and prosecution and the offender, and you don't have to be held responsible for this. And once we get that message out, then it's going to be a new day for everybody, and that's the story that we need to
And
be
I think
telling.
we're moving. I know this. I'm very impressed with the results that this unit is. I know that we had. Can you tell me kind of the difference between the unit that we had in the past, and was that in where we are today, and what we're doing differently in that regard? Because this sounds fantastic from that standpoint.
We haven't had this unit before.
Well, you've had a domestic unit before.
There were prosecutors assigned to County Criminal Court Number 5. They were misdemeanor prosecutors.
Okay.
So we haven't had a dedicated unit to handle these cases, sir.
Okay. So so things are going. You're doing the misdemeanors as well as.
No, sir. Right now, our assignment are felony cases, sir.
Okay. So are the misdemeanors still being done you don't have a special unit that's doing anything in the misdemeanor area?
No, sir. We have attorneys assigned to County Criminal Court Number 5, and they're supervised by the supervision attorneys in that section.
But isn't the misdemeanors where you could begin to take maybe the first-time offenders and prevent them from ending up in the felony area?
Your first-time offenses are assault, family violence, Class A misdemeanors. That'd be correct.
You do have.
Can I address that?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so we actually now have 5 attorneys instead of 3 that are assigned to the Misdemeanor Family Violence Court. But I want to address the issue you all have about overcriminalization, about how we deal with these. So misdemeanors are first offenses. Felonies are second offenses. We primarily talk to you about felony level cases that this unit has been working on. The reason that it's so important that the police chiefs are here and that they have sent, we did a training for 110 officers last week, because we know from studies that an offender who beats his spouse, and I said he because it's primarily he, beats his spouse is logical and rational and responds to logical, rational pressure because they have control over what they do. They don't beat their spouse in the mall typically. Right? We have a few stunning examples otherwise. But typically, the abuse happens in a secluded place. So the idea is that if this is a person who rationally thinks about how to commit the crime, we can address with them how to rationally not commit the crime. And there are studies from other jurisdictions that primarily we heard about from One Safe Place that actually do that. And so our chiefs are here. Stand up. Just stand up. You don't have to talk.
We see them. They're the ones in uniform.
And what they did and the other chiefs in the Northeast, we're starting there with this focused deterrence effort. And the idea is with these defendants to categorize on this first call the violence level of this offender, and if it is a low-level offender, not to file the charge. To try to go into different programming with him, to meet with him, for the police officers to say, this isn't between you and her, it's between you and us. You're a criminal, we're the police. They get a letter from the chief of police. So there's going to be a different policing aspect that we think is going to decrease the number of cases that we get on first offense. But we also know, because they will have been out there, if they end up having to go back, when the defendant stands up in court and says, I've never done this before, we can put the lie to it because they've been there before, right? So it automatically makes our cases stronger while giving the low-level offender who's not dangerous an opportunity to change their conduct without entering the criminal justice system. What the police are talking about doing is exciting because it requires a lot of training on the part of their officers and just a real step of faith that they're willing to try this. But let me just say this about our Northeast officers. These are also some of our most progressive chiefs of police in the county. Hearst, for years, every single officer has been mental health certified. I think that's true now in these other departments. Bedford, when we started talking about this, the chief went ahead and started and upgraded his victim impact, his victim advocate group, so that they could deal with victims more effectively. Chief Perdue in North Richland Hills he sent more officers to our training than any other department. So these are, we're really trying, I get what you're saying about the overcriminalization, and not only is that bad societally, but it clogs up our court dockets with bad cases, right? And so this is a way to look at that. And then on the meantime, in our felony unit, addressing those serious offenders. And here's a good thing about these big verdicts. We can go to a first offender, the police can go to a first offender and say, you need to stop what you're doing because the guy who did it twice got 50 years. And if they really are rational offenders, then that gives them pause.
At what point, I know in some other instances they'll go to court and they'll have deferred adjudication that if they ever do this, if they don't do it, then it's off the record. But if they do, then it's not like you get one chance to get out of jail free card and then you don't start the process until the second or third. And I want that kind of a system. I want someone to be given the opportunity to, if this is the first time they've done it, to realize that, okay, this was not right. It's not going to happen again. But I don't want that second time. It's a matter of how many times are we going to do it before we say, okay, now we're in a deferred adjudication situation.
No. Okay. So the whole idea is, okay, you got to know me. I like locking people up. I haven't changed. And
that was a little bit of my problem and my question with, okay,
If somebody lays a hand on somebody else, then I am fine with that. But it also clogs up our court because some of these offenders are not particularly on a scale of danger. They're not there yet, right? So our goal with the police and with the training is for the police to intervene before they get to offense level. Does that make sense? So it's not that we are diverting them or putting them in a court program or any of that, because it's kind of like what you see now with the legislature looking at cite and release. This is an opportunity for these trained officers to go out and make a determination. Is this a person who needs to have the case filed, or is this a person who just needs to know that the police are putting his name on a list that's shared with the county, and if he does this anywhere else, they'll know immediately. Interesting.
Is there any public awareness program? Because Tarrant County is a very diverse community. Many of our citizens and residents are immigrants and refugees from society whose culture is acceptable. Domestic violence is the norm. How do we deal with situations like that on a proactivity basis
You know, and I would say to you that if you can tell us any group that would let us come speak, we'll go. These lawyers go all over the county talking just about domestic violence and intimate partner violence and how it has to stop, and we will go. We're happy to go because that's part of our job is to let the public know that, you know, it doesn't matter what your culture is. It's a crime in the state of Texas. Anything else? Thank y'all very much for the unit, for the vote of confidence for us to do this, and we just wanted to let you know. So thank you for letting us take your time.
Thank you for the briefing. Thank you.
Y'all ready for me?
You're the one that's controlling it.
No. It's an illusion.
It is. Okay, so we have one more item, and that's the legislative updates. And I want to do two things, if we could. I just want to point out several things that Mr. Mendez had sent you in your court communication. Senate Bill 1, which is the Senate's version of the state budget. It is not out of the Senate yet, but it is going through the final markup. So we should see some action in that. The interesting thing is that we've just finished the 10th week. We're at a halfway point, but we have about 80% of the work yet to do. Senate Bill 2 by Betancourt. We've all seen and heard some of the issues that have come out of that. It has not come out it's not on the floor yet. You might recall that in the committee hearing that there was an amendment to that bill that increased the rollback rate from 4% to 5%. And I think that all of you have been briefed on that also. Senate Bill 4 by Perry. This is the Sanctuary City bill. It's passed the Senate and it's come over to the House. There have been some changes, and they're continuing to make some changes. Representative Guerin is one who's carrying that in the House, and he has been more than happy to work with us to put some clarifications in the bill and to also discuss the issue of sovereign immunity. So those are the things that are in Mr. Mendez's memorandum to you, and I'll be more than happy to try to answer any questions as it relates to that particular issue. Second of all, I had a conversation with Commissioner Wynn. Commissioner Wynn asked that we talk about homestead exemptions, and just for your review, currently, if a county is to give a homestead exemption, it has to be a percentage of the assessed value of that resident. That would treat someone who has $1 million home and a $100,000 home in a way where that a greater value benefit is given to the person in the $1 million home. We've talked a little bit about the possibility of legislation that would change the percentage to maybe a dollar amount. And as the state does in public schools, Senator Watson, Senator out of Travis, has introduced a bill. It's Senate Bill 418, which would actually, and it would require a constitutional amendment, but would also give the flexibilities of counties and municipalities of either doing a dollar amount or a percentage amount. And it's really tailored so that the dollar amount could not exceed what the maximum would be on a percentage amount. I'll give you an example. Maximum is 20%. Okay, so what this does is Senator Watson's bill says if you can give no more than $5,000 as if the value is $25,000 or less of the average home, taxable home. But if it goes up, you can increase that dollar amount, but never get to the point that it gets higher than 20%
of the appraised value of
yes,
that particular piece of property.
Yes, sir. Yes.
So the median, the average value.
The value on that is determined because it's across the board. The value is the average value of a homestead in the county.
Okay, so last year I think you said our average value is about 180.
I think about 150, 160 somewhere. It's somewhere in that area.
What you're saying then, if it was 150, then what you're saying is we could not give if we gave a dollar exemption, if we gave a $50,000 homestead exemption, then in that case, it could be no more than 30 because 20% of the 150 would be.
You're absolutely correct, yes.
So the floor is 5,000.
Yes,
And then the ceiling would be 20%.
No greater than
of
20%.
the average value.
That's correct.
Okay.
But right now, it's not that way. Right now, if you give a 20%.
It is 20% of the value of the house. So
Now, somebody I've listened to this debate, it's Conference of Urban Counties. Harris County talks about the fact that they've got a 20% and that some folks, if they got a $200,000 home, for some reason he was talking in terms of a $160,000 exemption.
There may be, and I heard that also, and I'm not sure that is a collectivity of all the exemptions that might apply to that home, not just a county homestead, but also I'm understanding that
their average would be 320 and that somewhere in there or something along that. I don't know, but now that you say that, that's an interesting calculation.
There may very well be some special type of.
Because you've heard Judge Emmett say that same thing.
Yes, I have, and I was trying to run the calculations myself, and I can't get to that number.
Okay.
You didn't go to Rice.
Well,
I did go to the only university in the state of Texas that's graduated a president of the United States.
And it means about as much now as it's kind of like being from Arkansas. You can say a whole lot of things that still don't get you anywhere.
Still bad.
I think I would certainly be supportive of being able to give a dollar amount versus a percentage. I agree with the percentage. I don't see how that works.
I think Senator Watson's bill makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
So it's still in committee, but we're tracking it, and we'll keep you all updated on that. By the way, of all residences in Tarrant County, there are 375,000 residences that have a homestead exemption.
Okay. And there's there's 800-something thousand houses or residential properties, I think.
I don't know that percentage, but.
Okay.
So I'll be more than happy to answer any questions or attempt to answer any questions you may have. Thank you, Your Honor. That's all we have this morning.
Then at this time, we'll recess our open meeting to proceed to close to discuss items exempt under Section 551.071, 072, 074, 076, and 087. If anybody here tomorrow night, so.
It's $4 there, right?
Yeah, that's what he'll charge me for. Should it be closer walk, I might be 10.
Reduced rate.
Having returned from our closed session and there being no business to conduct at this time, we are adjourned.
All right.